In today's episode, Rish and I analyze Ash Blankets, a Canadian DTC brand that sells weighted blankets. We're going to be sharing some ideas on how Ash can increase conversion rate and sales by focusing on three major areas of opportunities. The first one, it's all about increasing users' trust in the product and in the brand. Rishi even rewrote some parts of the product page copy, so it's definitely worth a watch just for that reason. The second one, it's all about lowering users' friction by making it super easy for people to choose the right product variant. The third one, we actually noticed that Ash weighted blankets have a little bit of a higher price points than competitors. So we have some recommendation on how Ash can justify a higher price point. Now, before we get started, we have a lot of super juicy episodes coming out in the next weeks. So make sure to hit the subscribe button in order to be notified when a new one comes out. Now, time to get into the show, so keep watching.
Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode. And in this episode, we are going to talk about a Canadian brand called Hush Blankets. They are extremely successful. They are also very popular. They got their start in Dragon's Den, which is a Canadian show similar to Shark Tank here in the US. And we're just going to jump in and talk about, give you some kind of an overview about how their page is structured. So I'm just going to actually change my view. Just bear with me. And all right. So let's talk about this. So this is their mobile page, as you can see on the screen. And we're looking at the mobile page because most people are seeing it this way. It's very important to see the page from the perspective of shoppers. By the way, hey, Lorenzo, how's it going?
What's up, buddy? Oh, good, you? How's
good,
Florida?
Good. Oh, it's good. It's great. It's great. Yeah. So, all right. So, as you can see, just to kind of lay out, you can see it's a blanket. And so they've got a hero image right there on the left. You can see there are some other thumbnails. And then if you scroll down a little bit, it's a name of the product. Very simple. Hush Ice 2.0. I like this 2.0 naming system because it tells them it's better than 1.0. And it also tells them, it kind of makes it sound like a scientific product, right? So I really like that. They talk about, what it does. It's night sweats, anxiety, there's social proof reviews. And then below that, they have these bullet points, clearly defined bullet points. And then they have these color options. What you would expect is kind of standard. And then, of course, to me, a little bit of a sticker shock is the price point because, this is and we'll talk about this more in the episode, but people always anchor to what is known. And so I actually haven't done blanket shopping in a long time. So I don't know if $360 is good or low or whatever, but it's an important detail. And also they've kind of shown it in red font, which kind of is a little like shocking. But anyway, we'll discuss that later on. Below that, they have these payment options, buy now, fast and free shipping. Free shipping is really good. They have these standard icons, and there's a social proof screenshot, which is a curious choice, but that's what they have. And then if you come down
straight from Facebook, I believe. I wonder if
straight from Facebook. And for a skeptical buyer, they won't like the fact that it's a screenshot. I'm a marketer, so I was trying to select it. But for an actual shopper, that 1 week message, it kind of shows some recency right below it. So it might be good. If you come down, they've got some geo-targeting here as well, because we're on the Canadian website. So it says, proudly Canadian. So I really like that. They've got the Shop Hush 2.0 button, which I don't know what sense that makes.
It pushed the user up in the page, basically.
Yeah. And then they have some social proof. If you just come down, let's actually, I want to, come down further. Yeah, all this is fine.
Down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here they're talking about like how to use it. Step 1, there's step 2, and there's step 3. And what they're basically kind of saying is that, this is a product that it's a weighted blanket. It helps with anxiety, helps you sleep better. And one of the anxieties people might have because they haven't bought this is, can this be washed in the laundry? So they've got step 3 that says, unzip the duvet cover and wash the low temperature setting in the laundry. Come down. I actually like come down, Lorenzo. Yeah. So I like this. I like this head. This is actually, I think this is my favorite part actually. They immediately got into the skeptical mindset, and then they kind of showed, the reviews. I don't like. So when someone is, and again, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but anyway, let's fine. This is good. Let's go down. Let's go. I don't want to spend too much time discussing all these. And then they talk about the cooling technology. So obviously that's something that really matters because people are concerned about cooling. What's really interesting here though is, and I just want to point out over here, is that they've made a choice. And I don't know if this is something that they did consciously or subconsciously, but they are starting off by talking about the cooling technology, which tells me as a buyer that is what they are trying to like really push for. And I don't know if that's a good choice or a bad choice, because to me, the star of the show still is the fact that it's a weighted blanket, but that's a separate discussion. Can you come down, Lorenzo?
Yep.
And then they talk about the weight, how it helps with sleep, how it helps with deep touch pressure stimulation. So they're explaining what all of that is. And then they kind of reinforce the cleaning aspect, which is of course step 3 in their process. Can you come down further? And then did you hear about the give back?
Yeah.
This also actually was a very clever choice. They talk about the give back thing, but what I really liked was that they talked the review that this review that they showed over here. I thought this was really good. This is basically a customer complaining that she spent a lot of money buying 2 of them, and then she saw a homeless person with one of them, and her point was like, why the hell am I paying so much money when these are available? And they really did narrative control by taking that negative statement to really dramatizing the point that they're trying to make. So I really like that. And then they have FAQs. So I think, did I cover everything? The social proof and all.
Finally they have the reviews and so on. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I just a simple recap is that there's really nothing fundamentally from a UI UX perspective that it's like standard. I'm sure we can improve it in many ways, but that's not the purpose of the show. They are essentially selling a weighted blanket that has a cooling feature. And they've identified, again, this is our speculation, they've identified that one of the questions people have is about the cleaning. So they've talked about the cleaning at 2 different locations, and they've shown skeptical customers, they've shown the reviews of skeptical customers. So this is what we are going to now study and hopefully come up with insights that can dramatically improve their conversion rates.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I could get started first. All right, so idea number 1 for Ash. Let me show you quickly few things. As always, we go into my reviews mining document. This time, also like the other episodes, I have a tab called anxiety, where I basically recorded the list of all the anxieties that people had before they bought the product.
Could you make the font, could you make the view a little bigger potentially?
Yeah, like this.
Thank you. Yeah, even bigger maybe for this tab. Perfect. That's it, perfect.
Yeah, and as you can see on the top, people are saying, was a little bit skeptical before buying because I felt like it was too good to be true, right? Which, I want to kind of like, this tells me that there's a little bit of like lack of trust around, well, how is that possible that a blanket is able to make me fall asleep faster, reduces my anxiety. So there's a little bit of, again, like, kind of like, oh, it feels like magic almost, right? How is that possible that all of a sudden a blanket, without really seeing any sort of like technology behind it, is able to bring me from a status that I have where I can't sleep at night. A few personas, which I will be addressing in a little bit, also mentioned some like physical conditions and psychological conditions that is preventing them from sleep, to a situation of like, oh my God, all of a sudden, thanks to this blanket, I can now sleep. Now, what happens is that the skepticism becomes even bigger if the user, the customer, has previously bought other weighted blankets in the past, and those didn't work for him or her, right? So now all of a sudden we have, and it's actually something that I would love to, if I were working with these guys, I would love to understand how many of their current customers, or actually how many of the customers that start buying the product actually previously owned a weighted blanket before, and what their experience looks like. Because if they are switching from a weighted blanket that they bought before and that did not work, now the skepticism around the whole concept of weighted blanket is even higher, right? Now, obviously, they have, as we showed earlier, we have this section around the skeptical down here, which is good that they basically they're introducing an objection, right, that people might have probably before even, and this is my speculation here, probably before even the user has that objection. Now, something that I would do here is because it's almost like half the page on mobile. Sure, on mobile people tend to scroll a little bit more than desktop just because of the nature of the device. But I would want to understand how many people actually reach this point, to see like how many people are actually seeing the skepticism behind it, right? Now, so I have a few ideas around how to kind of how they can try to solve this skepticism and lack of trust issue. So idea number one is to basically what if, I wonder if these guys have done any scientific study or scientific trial around the impact that weighted blanket has on sleep. And if so, they should definitely show it on the website, right? This is it's a great way to build trust and show people that a lot of people have gotten a bunch of results from that, right? Then, the other thing is how is that possible that a blanket is able to make people fall asleep faster, right? So they should be explaining the whole technology behind it a little bit more. Just giving how is that possible? Give me a reasons why. And I actually looked up, on Google. I did a little bit of Google research, and I found this kind of a definition of a weighted blanket. Let me read it out loud to you, Rishi. Weighted blankets are believed to stimulate production of happiness hormones like dopamine and serotonin, and reduce levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. This helps the user enter in a more relaxed state, which is conducive to sleep, right? Now, this is just me Googling, the meaning of weighted blanket. But what I thought this is interesting is that they're actually a little bit explaining how it's possible that a weighted blanket helps people, sleep, right? The other thing I had is, again, the skepticism around results and how is that possible. One idea I had here, and this comes from actually a voice of the customer, straight from a quote from reviews mining, where a user basically said, "Oh, I know I can now sleep better because I have an Apple Watch device, right, that actually tracks my sleeping patterns. And I compared the sleeping pattern of before I bought the blanket and after. So now I'm like, well, this is a perfect example of why don't they show a testimonial that compares the sleeping pattern of an iWatch or, another tool, another device that people use to kind of start tracking sleeping patterns is Oura Ring. I don't know if you've seen it, people wearing a ring just because it's some people don't like to go to sleep with the watch on. So why don't they show a testimonial or even like a story, like a user story, customer story that shows before and after of the sleeping pattern and how the user was able to now gain 2-3 hours of sleep thanks to the weighted blanket, right? Yeah, that's kind of like all I got for this idea.
All right. So I'm now going to, again, we're talking about Hush blankets, and we're trying to figure out ways in which, in ideas for them to improve their conversion rates. So Lorenzo, if you can open up my document.
Yep.
We worked on this obviously independently.
As always.
So I want to actually talk about is what I was focused on, and I'd like to prioritize items, based on what is I think is most important. Lorenzo, if you just open the page one more time, the mobile page, just want to and scroll right to the top. Okay, right, perfect. Just come down a little bit more where the opening of the description is. Okay, you just stop right there. So the key lesson here is, this is one of the dilemmas of copywriting that we all fall into, is that imagine if your boss came to you and said, I want to improve the copy of the page. It's, if you were working for Hush, it's a very complicated thing. You have to understand what the product does. You have to read all the reviews. It's not a simple 2-hour project. And I have a very simple hack for that. And this is something that I think more people need to focus on. If consumer behavior, it's what I find really beautiful about consumer behavior is that it is ridiculously predictable. And so we can actually learn from it. I don't care what your website is, and I don't care what your product is, and I don't care what year it is, right? 2020 versus 1750. What you will find is that if you have technology that can actually track people's attention spans, you will notice that the attention is the highest at the opening of the sales pitch, and then progressively gets worse and worse, right? So people that got to third page of your sales pitch is going to be 1/10 of people that started reading the opening. This is just pattern plays out every single time. I don't think there's any exception to the rule. It could be Peloton, it could be Nike, it could be Tesla, it doesn't matter. Same pattern plays out, which tells me that if I was trying to improve the copy of a page, I could say I'm going to improve the entire page, or I could say I'm going to focus on the part where I can have the biggest impact, which to me is the opening. And so the opening really, really, really matters. And so I would focus on just the opening part. And one of the things, in order to improve something, we have to first understand what the control is. The control is the version that we have right now. If you read the copy, it says your new partner in bed, ! And we're not going to cover deconstruction in this episode, but the basic idea is, and Lorenzo and I talk about this a lot, is that every word is a tax. Every element is communicating an emotion. When I see an Lorenzo, when you see an exclamation mark, what emotion comes to your mind?
Anger.
No, exclamation mark. Like the
like I'm either like excited or angry or
some reaction.
Like quite emotional, like strong, dramatic, emotional, kind of like a reaction.
Yeah. And that's really interesting that you see that way. Like, to me, my interpretation of exclamation mark is essentially like excitement. Like, when like someone is like super bubbly, like woohoo, like, and actually what's really interesting, and again, I don't want to, I'm just making this point to make a bigger point, which is that the mental model that I was using for a product like Hush blankets is kind of like going to a doctor analogy. And because it's kind of related, because it's related to sleep, which is actually in fact, there are some wonderful statistics around sleep, which I didn't look at, but I've seen in previous client projects where I think they say like 60-70% of people struggle with sleep. So it's a chronic issue for people. And it's something that is, it's very debilitating. I've myself had insomnia in the past, and it's really a helpless feeling. So I kind of like the analogy of going to a doctor, and I actually don't like the analogy of you being excited. Like, I don't want you to be excited. I want you to demonstrate expertise. And so if you go back to my document, Lorenzo, I can now talk about like how I so basically I'm saying the start of the sales pitch is the most important. If you don't nail the start, they won't even get to page 3. So it's meaningless to actually have really good content in page 3. So then we've included a screenshot of their opening. If you just go below the screenshot, I just want to talk about, okay. So to me, a weighted blanket is a highly technical product, at least as I was interpreting it. I'm not buying it to show it off to my friends. It's not like a car, a luxury car, right? Or I'm not buying it because they have a color gray or black. I don't give a crap, right? I'm buying it because I want to sleep better at night. And the copy on the page, if you scroll down, I've just included 2 snippets of the copy. So they say things like, it's your partner in bed, or drift into a cool sleep or whatever. The first one, partner in bed, they're trying to be a little tongue in cheek, I think, and it's kind of fun and quirky. And that other one which says, drift into cool sleep is kind of friendly, how marketers would talk. I would actually, and this is something that brands need to do more experimentations around. We focus a lot on copywriting. First of all, we don't focus on copywriting, but when we do focus on copywriting, we look at copywriting as being content and ideas. I think tone is just as important part of copywriting. So I would actually test a different voice. And I would like to do an experiment where we treat this like a conversation between a patient and a doctor. And some of you might be freaking out when I talk about this drastic change in tone and saying, oh my God, that's radically different. So the beauty of A/B testing, and this is why A/B testing is great, is that I can actually test a different tone. If people are coming to this page from my ad, then they are coming to this page and they are on the page deciding if they're going to buy or not. So it's essentially like a closed ecosystem, which allows me to kind of essentially test a different tone. And this is why I would A/B test it. But I wanted to give a specific example, instead of just talking in theoretical terms, I want to talk about how I would actually write the opening. So Lorenzo, if you can just go back, can you just go back to the screenshot real quick? So let's just a little higher. Okay, so let's just read the copy. It says, your new partner in bed, drift into a cool, deep sleep with this sleep-inducing and cooling blanket. To me, this is just a marketer talking. This is just my interpretation. Then if you look at the features or the bullet points, it says relieves night sweats to help you sleep cool and dry all night long. Again, it's a repetition of the same point that was made in the opening. Then it says relaxes the body and mind to reduce bedtime anxiety and stress. Say goodnight to insomnia. Again, none of this is being substantiated. It's just a bullet point. And then they talk about the weight of the blanket feels like a gentle hug that calms your body and helps you sleep easy without tossing and turning throughout the night. Again, I think it's kind of making the same point in slightly different ways. So it's classic marketing speak. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I want to now show you how I would have written the copy. So Lorenzo, if you scroll down a page, maybe. Yeah. Okay. So here's my copy. If you just highlight that opening sentence, it says there are 43. Yeah. So that is the opening of my sales pitch. So it's going to say, and I haven't thought about the spacing and how much we can fit. And that's not the point here. I just wanted to put some copy out. So we start off by saying there are 43 weighted blankets on the market. We've tested them all, right? And there's a lot to unpack over here. And I don't know how to, if we should discuss all of this, Lorenzo, or should I just continue?
No, I love it because, I wonder if these guys have done it. I bet they've done it, that like they've tested a lot of different competitors. And actually they should show it that they've tested different competitors, right? Yeah. Because this goes back to like, okay, a claim is fantastic. A claim backed with a proof, an image, a video, number, statistics, is 10x more powerful.
This is true. And there's even just this opening statement, there is a lot I've thought about. This is a statement template that I've come up with after years of experimentation. There's a lot here. The first thing that's powerful about it is that it instantly demonstrates expertise.
Yep.
The second thing about it is that one thing that's really interesting is that if you notice that second sentence, and I don't want to get too much into it, but it says we've tested them all. We could have also said we are the best, right? The reason why that would not have worked is that the moment the consumer smells that they are listening to a marketer, they start discounting what the marketer is saying. But when you say we've tested them all, our brains, you have to understand neuroscience. Our brains are machines that are designed to fill the gaps. So when you show an incomplete statement, like we've tested them all, because it's an incomplete statement, because it doesn't tell you what the punchline is. The reader has to fill the punchline themselves. And the reader has no choice but to fill the punchline of they probably are better than those 43 competitors. Otherwise, why the hell do they have a website, right?
Exactly.
And what is also really interesting here is that I've talked about the fact that there are 43 different weighted blankets. So I'm already telling the buyer that, listen, there are lots of alternatives for you to consider. And remember, our brain is designed to conserve energy. So I'm telling the user that yes, you can walk into the wilderness and look at these alternatives, but that's a huge amount of. So anyway, that's the opening. Then it starts off with a headline of 3 years of experimentation. Again, doubling down on dramatization of our expertise, but doing it in a different way. And then it says, we were wrong. Again, always I'm writing copy in a way where I want the reader to want to continue reading. We talked about the importance of the opening. So when you start off with, we were wrong, you have no choice but to understand how you were wrong, right? Then it says, Hush was started with a singular goal of making the world's best weighted blanket. Again, showing purpose. We're not just a company that is making a product, but we're making the world's best weighted blanket. We didn't realize this. We didn't realize how hard this journey would be, period. What you're seeing this morning, so here we are actually using a piece of JavaScript code, and I will tell my developer that if the person is seeing this page in the morning, it'll say what you're seeing this morning. If you're seeing it in the afternoon, it'll say what you're seeing this afternoon. It's a little bit of personalization, just enough where it doesn't come across as a gimmick, but enough where the person's like, oh yeah, that's funny, I'm actually in the afternoon. Is a success after 32 failed prototypes. Again, dramatizing how many times we failed. The consumer always wants to buy the best version of a product that exists. So by telling them that we failed 32 times, you're showing them, you're dramatizing the improvements you've made, and the user feels good about the fact that they didn't discover it 2 years ago when you had version 1.1, 1.0. Then we kind of, in the second paragraph, we talk about the hard science. Now I want to really kind of start dramatizing the fact that this is not just a blanket. So I say the weight of this blanket comes from 105 sewn squares. So on their product page, lower on the page, they talk about the fact that they have these individual squares, and each of them has this non-toxic glass sand that they fill in each of these squares. That's where the weight comes from. And it can also move around a little bit, but within the square. So I'm saying the weight of this blanket comes from 105 sewn squares, each filled with just the right weight. Notice that word choice, just the right weight. Again, I'm dramatizing expertise, of non-toxic glass.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you because you're also, what you're doing there, you're also lowering any objection that people might have around, oh, it's going to be too heavy for me, right?
That's exactly right.
The blanket is going to be too heavy, or I'm a tiny person, and I wonder if that's going to be too heavy for me, and I can barely breathe in the middle of the night.
That's exactly right. And one thing what we've done here is we've converted these keywords into links. There are two types of people. There are skimmers and diggers. The skimmer is going to read this and say, I'm sold. That's great. You've answered my question. The digger is going to read this and say, how the hell do you know it's just right, right? And so remember, one of the golden rules of conversion optimization is that if the buyer has unresolved questions in their mind, we know with statistical certainty that they will not buy. No one ever buys if they are unsure about something. So what you're doing here is you are giving them a path to actually scratch that itch and get the answer. And people scratch that itch by clicking on links, right? So you click on this link and then it'll show a light box. So that box that I have over here. And here is how we dramatize that statement. So we say getting the weight just right for each of the 105 squares isn't just a nice to have feature. It's what makes or breaks the blanket. So essentially basically saying you either get it right or you fail. If the weight is 10% more than needed, it adds too much restriction and negatively impacts the quality of sleep. Here again, what I've done is for diggers, I've made quality of sleep a hyperlink. And the idea is that when you click on it, instead of showing another pop-up, we will slide out content to give you, I haven't written that content, but it's just a placeholder. And then it says, if the weight is too low, then the blanket loses all effectiveness. So we're trying to say, basically, we have to get it perfectly right. And so that's the thing. But notice something else that I've done over here. If you look at the next sentence, it says, please let me know if this section is clear. If it isn't, I'd like to talk to you. So there are two things that have happened here. First of all, it's very clear that this was written by a person. Whenever you're writing copy, even if, of course, it's not an individual, but you want the reader to feel like it's a one-to-one conversation. So that's why I've added, if it isn't, I'd like to talk to you. I didn't say we'd like to talk to you. It's not a corporation to an individual. I wanted to be person to person. But what is happening here is something very profound. First of all, I've given a mechanism for the user to tell me if I've addressed their anxiety or not. So that's number one. But what's also interesting is, if you really think about it from a motivation level, someone who is coming to this pop-up has read my description, clicked on the link, read this pop-up and come to the bottom. This is a highly motivated buyer. So my thought was this, right? So if you look at the second developer note, it says when clear is clicked right there, when clear is clicked, show a happy emoji or whatever. When unclear is clicked, ask for the person's email address with the promise that we'll respond in 24 hours. Couple of things here. Number one is that I want to capture the email address because they're highly motivated. No casual browser would have ever got to this stage. The second thing is that I've been very specific in saying that you will get a response in 24 hours because nobody wants to give up their email address for an open-ended transaction. And my point is that now I want to talk about, very quickly, I want to talk about why would I prioritize this email? And my answer is what I just gave you, is that this is not just a customer request email. To me, Lorenzo, and I don't know if you see it differently, but this shows a highly motivated potential buyer who's very close to making a purchase. Do you agree or do you disagree?
So I have some thoughts around this because, when they say unclear, sure, I think, step one could be to get an email address, but then step two, actually step one could be, what about it? What about what you just read is not clear? Yeah. So now all of a sudden you start actually capturing qualitative data around what they just read is not clear, right? And I wonder, after you got, let's say, 200 responses, I wonder if you find like common insights, common reason around what's unclear about that. So you keep on improving. It's kind of like a loop, right? You keep on improving based on the copy there, based on all the different insights that you gather. So it's kind of like a research tool, basically.
Oh yeah, right? No, it's absolutely a research tool, but it's also a way for me to, that's right. I mean, ultimately it's a research tool, but this person is there right now. And I would prioritize, like, in the internal ticketing system, I would actually prioritize this email because I think that's different than just a regular email.
So here's another thought I had around this. I wonder, and this is like, actually, I would love to run this sort of like analysis. I wonder how many people actually say it's unclear. They leave the email address, then they scroll down in the page. They found, a lot of other, kind of like elements that help them in the decision-making process. They get convinced, because we all know that not everybody, like, they're always making a trade-off, right, between motivation and anxiety, right? Now, I wonder how many people that have submitted it's unclear then end up buying or end up not buying. Because to me, it's a sign of, okay, it's unclear, right? What is the weight of what I just put as a copy on the whole decision-making process? And, based on the feedback I'm getting, does it make sense to make changes to that part of the copy?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, and this is an important distinction I want to draw is or communicate in this show, is that we are only testing is an iterative process. We're not talking about the winning recipe. We're basically saying, here is something that I believe is different enough from the control, which is worth experimenting with. Is it going to win? I have zero idea. Yeah. But it's the starting point. So, okay, if you just come down to the bottom, So if you look at the structure of my sales pitch, again, this was not intentional, but I'm again trying to constantly dramatize the difficulty of getting it just right, because by doing that, I'm actually communicating my expertise. And one of the techniques that we know is that, again, when a doctor, if you think about the names of medical conditions and prescriptions, they are very complicated names. Now, I don't think this is intentional. I don't think the medical community were a group of marketers, but actually, I think it has a marketing implication. Something that sounds complicated, for me as a consumer, I feel like, okay, this is really effective. So what I've done here is I've now got a new headline called Dilemma. And it's, again, you'll notice very short sentences. It says, Stephanie isn't James. Again, this is one of the questions that the person has, is that, I'm not the same as other people. So how do they get this right? And I want to address this question. So I said, so how can we design the perfect weighted blanket? Again, showing questions allows me to connect with the questions that are floating in my mind. By sleep, and so the answer is by sleep testing hundreds of people to identify the perfect. And by the way, I've just made this up. I don't have any idea about if they've actually done this, but this is my template. By sleep testing hundreds of people to identify the perfect weight that works for most people, we use a principle of statistics called normal distribution to find the sweet spot, and I've included a graph over here. What this does is it actually, again, it's a little bit for optics, for the person to look at this and say, oh my God, this company is a bunch of like statisticians, or they really understand this. So it's a little bit of it's a little sneaky in a way, but I'm not misleading the buyer. I would go to the client and I would say, we need to actually do this kind of a study, but I'm just showing the client how we can actually demonstrate expertise. And then again, below that, I'm saying, please let me know if the section is clear. If it isn't clear, I'll rewrite it, clear, unclear. I constantly am adding these feedback beacons. So this is, I think this is the opening that I have, Lorenzo.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to say is that, when you're talking about, here, where is it? Oh, yeah. After 32 failed prototypes, I think you and I spoke before in private conversations around the power of showing past prototypes, right?
Yeah.
And a few months ago, I actually posted on LinkedIn about this. Imagine if you've been in the business for 50 years, right? And all of a sudden, you show every single prototype that you've gone through in the past 50 years to find finally the last, most compelling product for people. At the end of the day, if you think about in general, like the business of an e-commerce, selling physical products, you compare it with like the SaaS business, right? The SaaS, at the end of the day, it's continue improvement of a product, right? And obviously, as a user, you just see the end conclusion of the product, right? So what I was thinking here is, imagine if you even like have a video of how you've gone through like each step, each prototype, and even like a story around, okay, prototype 1, here's why we made changes, and then how you became prototype 2. Then prototype, it kind of like some websites have like a story like, we got started in 1980, and my father started a company in 1980, and then in 1981, we had the first client. So it's kind of like a timeline of all the different prototypes, and even the decisions that have been made along each prototype.
And the great thing, and you're absolutely right, and I think sometimes some people listening to this would be saying, well, this is too much content on the product page. Yeah. We're not talking about embedding this on the page. We're talking about, we could just simply make 32 failed prototypes into a hyperlink, and then that could reveal a light box. So you're letting the user decide. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. And also, let's not forget that we're also tracking the way people are interacting with all these elements, right? So when people are clicking here, we'll be tracking that behavior. And we want to track not just if people are clicking on it, but what happens after they click on it, and how clicking on that is impacting their behavior of buying, not buying, right? So it's also like a data point for whoever is running the test.
Wonderful. So that covers mine. Lorenzo, I'll toss it back to you, and you can discuss your next idea.
Yeah, my third idea around Ash is basically related to the different personas that I have identified in my reviews mining analysis. So here I basically identified, and again, when I say identified, it's just like people that on purpose in the review mention why they bought the product, what kind of like condition they have, or what kind of persona they are. So it's kind of like a self-identify sort of persona. Sometimes obviously people don't even mention that, other times they don't. So in this case, what I would do is I would actually set up an actual post-purchase survey to try to identify different personas and different people, the reason why they buy the product. But so here we have few kind of like persona identified, and the way like the main themes I'm seeing here are, I'm a hot sleeper. So what does that mean? It means that in the middle of the night, while I sleep, I tend to sweat. Which is interesting because they self-identify as hot sleeper, right? I get hot in the middle of the night, and obviously that wakes them up, and obviously that ruins their sleep. Then we have sort of like conditions, like health conditions or physical and mental conditions, anxiety, panic attack, insomnia, PSTD, fibromyalgia. So a bunch of like, conditions that people have. Now, I want to point the attention on the hot sleeper. Now, my next thing is I want to show you another anxiety, and I call it anxiety, but this thing in this case is also like a skepticism. Like people are skeptical about the product, but in particular, they're skeptical about, not just as we said before, will this work? But the next one is, will I get hot at night? Because again, this is like tied in with the persona. People come in and they consider themselves hot sleeper. So now they're wondering, my problem is that I sweat during the night. Will I be sweating in the middle of the night with this blanket? So what I kind of like, if we go back to the product page here, and I want to highlight the product images that they have, and kind of like, let's go through them really quick. So they have, product image with two people who are actually the founders, which, it's another kind of question I would have here. Why putting a photo of a founders, and actually do the users know that these are the two founders? Then again, product image, again, another product image from a different angle. And then finally at, 1, 2, 3, 5, image number 5, I got some people. There's an image of the product with the people. Now, I think what could be interesting is to kind of like lower that anxiety and skepticism around, well, will I be hot at night if I use it or not? So what if we actually have a photo of a person sleeping in a bed, and outside you can see like a tropical weather almost. It's an implied message, and we can even use copy there, right? And it's an implied message that even if you live in like Miami or the Caribbeans, or you won't get hot at night, right? So it's an implied message. It's a very small kind of like a detail, but people that are diggers, the way I love the way you define that sort of people. They notice that little detail, right? So they're like, oh my God, well, I wonder that, even if you're living in a super tropical weather, it's still gonna work for me.
That's beautiful. I want to just stop. I want to just add over
Yeah.
here, like, that's such a, see, that's why we have this thing. This is, you're obviously a master of deconstruction, because this is exactly the idea. You're noticing like really minute details. I love it. I think it's a great idea. It's a great insight. I didn't even think about it.
The other thing, talking about
and actually, Lorenzo, actually,
yeah.
I'll add one more thing here, is that
Yeah.
they could also
I love it.
use not geo targeting, but they can also have targeting where in the summer months they emphasize that heat attribute
Nice.
more than in the
Nice.
winter months, right?
Nice. Then let's talk about, before we get into the pricing, as you can see, the price is, quite steep. We actually, when we look at the anxieties here that people mention, the product was too expensive. So again, when we look at anxiety, the way people said that it was too expensive, it was, oh my God, at first I had some thoughts. I was a little bit skeptical about buying it. I had some hesitations about buying it because the price was too expensive, right? Now, knowing that,
59
and 59, it's a high price point. I think they can definitely do a better job at highlighting the quality of the product in the product images section. For example, I wonder how many people are clicking on the image, especially like the second one, to try to go into zoom in, try to understand the material a little bit. Because again, 359, I understand the whole technology behind it. But it feels quite steep. Then the other point I had here is, in general, if I wonder how many people get to like image number 5 all the way down here, and they actually see finally an image of people interacting with the product. Because again, something that I would actually want to test is, what if we actually showed 4 images of people only interacting with the product as the first images, as the first like 4 or 5 images that people see by default? Because again, when people see a photo of a person interacting with the product, they're actually imagining themselves owning that product, right? And imagine how the outcome they're trying to achieve, what the outcome will be when they consume that product. So, more images of people also, in general, like scrolling down. Yeah, here you see like a image of a person, but it's kind of like half hidden by the copy. It's not like 100%.
And it's promoting. It's actually, no, I have lots of criticism over here. So she's wearing the Hush, the eye cover thing, which is unrelated to me if I'm buying the blanket.
Yeah,
she's on a Hush pillow, unrelated to me. I don't need to know about your product line. I would like to see a product that I want you to dramatize the blanket.
Yeah, but also like in general, they don't have photos of human of people, right? So it feels like, nobody, like just putting human beings in a product page that enjoy the product and actually like talk about the benefits would definitely be something that I would want to test. That's all I got for this one. What's your next one, Rishi?
So the next topic that I want to talk about is size and weight.
Size and weight.
So if you go back to, I guess you can look at it over here as well. So, what I did was I have a king bed at home, and they have 2 sizes, 90 by 90 and 94 by 96. Now, I have no idea which one to pick. I don't understand how I'm supposed to, and this is a real dilemma. If you scroll down a little bit, so I did actually some research to find out just a little more. Yeah, so I did some research on the breakdown of the mattress sizes people bought in the US, and the biggest was queen, which is 41%. So that's actually the group I would care about the most. But the king were 18% as well. So this gives some context. This is how I would build an argument. This is one of the important tools that I want to teach marketers, is that don't ever go to a client and say, hey, this is, give context and build an argument. So this is how I would build my argument. But
you sound like a lawyer right now.
We are all lawyers. We are all lawyers.
I know. I was just joking.
But the challenge is that even if I were to have the queen, which is 41% of the buying audience, and of course I'm looking at the US, I'm sure it'd be similar across the world, and I don't think it's similar across the world. But my point is that I would find sources that are relevant to the point I'm trying to make. But if you select queen, for example, in queen, if you actually go to the live page, maybe we can just show if someone has queen, which is the biggest group. There are two sizes now. There are two weights: 20 pounds and 25 pounds. How is the consumer supposed to decide? How are you supposed to know? Now, what they have done is, if you scroll lower on the page, you will notice on maybe the third scroll, I also over here, step 1, so select the right size and weight. Tip is 10% of your body weight is ideal. Super hidden. This is one of the simple principles of marketing is co-locating related ideas, right? If the user is having anxiety around selecting the weight, this information needs to be available to them at that location versus them having that anxiety and having to scroll down. Who's going to have the insight that, oh, let me look lower on the page to see what this is? And by the way, even this is kind of hidden. Just go back to my concept real quick, and I'll just kind of, if you scroll lower, please. Thank you. Yeah, just lower, next page, maybe. Okay, so yeah, so as I mentioned over here, 20 and 25 pounds is hard to choose from. If you go lower again, I think I have some more content. Okay, so I've mentioned over here that they have explained this lower on the page. If you come lower, yeah, just goes down. Okay, so I would co-locate this, and the way I would do this is that how to choose hyperlink over here, because you want to diffuse the anxiety at the moment the anxiety was born, right? So when I'm here, I'm like, oh shit, how do I choose between these two things? I'll immediately notice this hyperlink, and when you click on the hyperlink, I've done a couple of interesting things over here. So on click, I would show a light box and I would show this content. 10% of your body weight is ideal. If you are in between weights, choose a bigger weight. There's a couple of things I've done over here. So this is copy that I've just made up, by the way, but I would run it by the client to figure it out. So the thing is that when you say, it's such bad copywriting when you say 10% of your body weight, because if I'm 200 and 220 pounds, that means I should go with 22-pound weight blanket. They have two choices. Scroll up a little bit. Let me see what the two sizes were, 20 and 25, right? 20 and 25 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. So what now? Am I looking at something that is closer on the lower end, or am I looking at something that's closer on the higher end? This is an unnecessary dilemma you've left in you've left the anxiety with me for no reason. So I just simply said, if you are in between those two numbers, choose the bigger weight. Now, this could be wrong. Maybe they recommend choosing the smaller weight, but I would force the client to give a decisive answer for the buyer, so that we don't leave people hanging if they are, in those ranges. Then what I've done right below that is I've used a question that is in the buyer's mind and made that a headline. And it says, what if I pick the wrong weight? Now, if you go back to their page, Lorenz, if you just go to the live page, one of their selling propositions right on top of the page where they show their icon, right here. One of their selling propositions is this fact that you get 100 nights free trial. So if that's already the case and the person has this anxiety, why not address that when the anxiety takes place? So if you go back to my notes, I simply say, if you don't love it within 100 days, simply use our return portal to ship it back. And then notice the copy I've written over here. See, the thing that I want to always do is that I want to make the reader feel like this 100%, this 100-day guarantee or happiness guarantee, this is actually nowadays become very common. And everyone has it. So I'm intentionally trying to change the language so that when the reader reads it, it feels like it's something unique. So that part I've left. But after that, I ask another question. Is there a catch? Because that's another question the user has. Like, what's the catch here? Is there a gotcha? And the answer is nope. Simply return and get your money back. We want to, I guess wrong copy. I should have. So we want you to sleep well we want to sleep well at night as well. Too. So basically I'm saying even we need to sleep with our clear conscience. So that's my insight there.
Yeah, so I have two things to add to this, because in this episode, we wanted to pick 3 ideas each. Obviously, we found a lot of ideas, I would say. So we had to kind of like choose which one to talk about. I actually want to talk about something that I found in my research. So I have this section called anxiety relief. And before I actually unveil what I put there, let me explain it to you. So basically, this is like people that intentionally said, oh, I wasn't sure, if I wanted to buy this product because of X anxiety, but then I saw ... anxiety relief. So I pulled the trigger and decided to buy. So now all of a sudden you have some people, and actually I found a pattern around what their anxiety relief is. You have a bunch of people mentioning the whole kind of like mental thought that they have in their brain. Well, I had this, fear about buying the product because of X reason, but that fear got completely deleted and canceled thanks to this anxiety relief element that I found on the website. Guess what the anxiety relief people mention?
100-day return happiness.
Ta-da! You win, Rishi. So 100% with you. The data shows that the 100-day return policy is an anxiety relief. So 100% there with you. The other thing that I wanted to mention around the choose the right size. So I'm going to show you an example of a competitor of Ash called Beer Abby. Basically here they have a similar section called size guide, and when clicking on it, and I thought it was quite interesting and compelling as well, when clicking on it, they actually show a visual of what the different weight looks like on each type of bed. So you truly understand, because people mention, oh, I bought the king size, and I can't show it to you because it's more like a voice of the customer type of data. It's not like kind of like a quantitative data from qualitative data. But a lot of people said, oh, I bought the queen one, but something that I noticed is that the blanket is too short for the bed, so I wish I bought the blanket for the king, right? So what this visual shows is exactly how the blanket would look like on a different type of bed, because maybe like somebody likes the blanket to be quite white, others don't really care. So yeah, just I thought it was kind of like a good visual right here.
That's great. I would even add, like, I mean, to me, these are such critical, pressure points of the sale. I would actually have a demonstration video where maybe the founder is actually even talking about. I mean, I again, these are future improvements. But yes, this is great. This is great. Yeah. So now we need to listen to your next idea, right?
Yeah, so the third idea I have today is around pricing. So let's go back to my anxiety document. So again, let's talk about the too expensive. So some people mentioned that the product, they had the anxiety around, the pricing of the product was too expensive. And we all know that this is something that always comes up over and over in a lot of different research that I've done in the past. But what I've done, I was kind of curious here. So what I've done is I wanted to do a little bit of research around the competitive landscape in Canada of Ash, and I wanted to understand the pricing point of their competitors. But obviously, I don't know who their competitors are. So the first thing I would do is, when customers buy the product, I would send them a survey, right, within the first hour from buying the product, asking what other companies they actually have considered and compared Ash with. So now I have like the whole list of all the competitors that I need to, sell myself against. but obviously I don't have that information because we're not working with Ash. So what I did was I did a quick keyword research. So I'm using this tool called Ahrefs. That basically, like, you put a keyword. I put weighted blanket. You can actually select the country, Canada, and I found, what seems to be, potential competitors that these guys have in Canada based on what people search in Google. And I want to kind of like walk you through who these guys are. So we have Costco here, obviously Ash. Then again, Costco. We have people Googling weighted blanket Amazon. So, going straight into Google and searching for a product from Amazon. And then here's other brands that, some of them I've heard of, others I haven't. And the Casper, super well known in the mattress industry, Walmart, Gin, and then Grab It. So there's a lot of others that are kind of like mentioning. I didn't want to go through all of them. So what I did was I actually looked at all these weighted blankets from all these brands, right? And you see $99 here on Costco. 49, so all kind of like much lower price point than 369. Then I looked at Gravid, 270. Okay, kind of like much higher than Costco, but still quite expensive. Quite cheaper than Ash. Amazon, I mean, look at this, 69, 79. 82, dramatically more cheaper than Ash. Then we got ND 195 and so on, other products as well, right? Casper 169. So my assumption here, and again, I would do a little bit of research on this, but my assumption is that now Ash is the most expensive option that somebody that is going through a consideration set of other competitors has as in front of them, right? The problem is that now you have to justify and explain why you're actually better than competitors, considering that sometimes you're even like 3x more expensive, right? So what I would do is, again, I would try to understand why customers picked Ash against competitors, considering that the price is so much higher. And I would actually run a survey again here asking, who have you considered in your decision-making process before you bought from Ash? And then I would just keep it open-ended. And then I would ask as a follow-up question, what made you choose us versus others? Now, I would actually ask another follow-up question with the purpose to have them sell me on why they chose me versus competitor, knowing that the price is more expensive. So now what they need to do is not just, they don't have any, I almost put them like, against the wall, right? And now they need to convince me that they had to pick Ash, right? Somehow, considering that the price of Ash is 3-4x more expensive than other competitors. So I would want to understand, why they picked me considering that factor. And then the other thought I had is, like, in general, you were talking about technology earlier. I think, I wonder, and I don't know enough about the product, obviously, and the technology behind it. But I would want to understand, why is the Ash technology better, if any, of my competitors to justify such a higher price? And the other point I have around pricing is that I wonder, and this is just me speculating again here. So they have two type of different kind of weighted blanket. They have the classic one, and they have the ICE 2.0. Now, the classic one is actually cheaper than the 2.0. It's like $100 cheaper. Now, one question I have is, well, I wonder if now the cool one is competing against the classic one. And I would want to understand if people are even comparing the two, right? And why they're deciding to go with the cool one versus the classic one.
Yeah.
Because now I have to do a little bit of convincing. And obviously, I don't know enough about the company. Maybe, they don't want to make two products compete, obviously, because, maybe, I don't know, like their margins, for example. Like, I wonder, this is like a total company's decision, but I wonder if the cool option has better margins, maybe there's an opportunity to push that one a little bit more. And so I would run a survey again here to the people that bought the cool one and trying to understand if they consider the classic one and what made them choose the cool one versus the classic one. The last point I have around pricing is around, let me go back to this one. It's around the installments. So here they put, obviously $359 or for interest-free payments of $89.75 with Sezzle. Now, if I click on this, nothing happens. So there's a lost opportunity on how to explain what Sezzle is, what the benefits of Sezzle are, how it works, and so on. So there's an opportunity to do that because it seems broken and not working.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. I loved it. I agree with everything you said. And then it just so happens that my last and final idea is also about price justification. And so to me, the price is a huge point of friction, and we need to basically address it. So if you scroll down, I think I might have something screenshot. Yeah. So what I've done here is I have added a graphical element to try and mirror the question that might be happening in the buyer's mind. Like, whoa, I'm not suggesting that this, and this actually brings up a very important topic. So anyway, so here's what we do. Actually, this is why testing is so. Just scroll up a little bit. So actually, there's just go back to that thing. So there's actually a couple of things that we're going to do over here. So when you click on it, I would have an explanation, try and beautifully explain why we are priced the way we are. Sometimes what happens is, as marketers, we do an experiment and we look at the test results and we say it didn't work, so people don't care about the pricing or whatever. There's actually multiple elements we have to pay attention to. The click rate for the call to action is one data point, and then the conversion impact, and Lorenzo's talked about this several times as well. You can modulate. Now you have two variables to play with. So my point is that how many people clicked on that call to action, and what we've realized after testing is that really, if it's an important call to action, you want 10% of people to around 10% of people to click it. If it's lower than 10%, like if you have like 1% people clicking on it, you can't actually use that data point to mean anything because it's too small in terms of visibility. Now, it does not mean that people aren't clicking it because it's not a detail that people care about. It could just simply be the design of it, the placement of it, the copy that you had did not connect with the question that they had. So we want to keep on optimizing till that click-through rate reaches the 10% mark, around 10% mark. And again, it varies from business to business. So scroll down a little bit. And basically all I'm saying here is that if it's less than 10%, then we need to continue improving the call to action. Is there anything more, or is this the end of it, Lorenzo? I think this is it. Yeah. So I did not even write copy for the price justification. It's just understood that there needs to be an explanation for it. So my basic idea is that modulating those two variables is what we should focus on. So that concludes my idea.
Cool. That's awesome. That was a fun episode, I would say, Rishi. I think, we got at the end, we had 3 ideas, you, 3 ideas, me. Yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. No.
Excellent. I think it went really well, guys. Thank you for sticking with us today. We'll do another episode very soon. And looking forward to sharing that with you as well. Ciao.
Ciao. Bye bye.